Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us live from the MarketSite studio in Times Square, Rahul Sharma is back with us, managing partner at Indxx. Indxx, an innovative provider of custom indexing and calculation solutions tied to $23 billion of assets under management. Indxx recently launched its Indxx Metaverse Index, and we're also going to learn about an ETF that allows investors to get exposure to it. Rahul, it's great to have you back in person at MarketSite.
Yeah.
It is great to be back. Tell us about the methodology behind the index.
Yeah, so we're one of the leaders in the thematic indexing space, and the way we typically build our thematic indexes in terms of methodologies is we focus on revenue. So that's what we've done with this index. We've looked at the overall metaverse universe. We've tried to understand where it came from, where it is today, and where it's going. So this is a space that we started looking at more than a year ago, well before the name change of Facebook and other things that were happening, because we identified it as something that was really going to be long-term and disruptive. So what we've done here is we've tried to identify what we call sub-themes, so 5 different areas that we think are going to be critical for the development of the metaverse. Those are areas like intellectual property and content around it, the software, the hardware, and the platforms, companies like Roblox and others, and a few other sub-themes as well. So that's been our focus, and what we do is we only include companies that are generating more than 50% of their revenue from one of those sub-themes. Those are the only ones that are eligible for inclusion. And then what we do there, those are companies on a global basis. What we do there is then we take the top 50 by market cap and we include those in the index. And we do that process and that revenue check twice a year.
Let's talk about the current state of the metaverse, because it sounds as if some of the applications are already being practically used in everyday things. I mean, Roblox, think about almost a decade with the kids playing the game, and it actually has been around longer than just the buzzword that we've been hearing about for the past year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the state of the metaverse right now is obviously one of very quick and fast innovation. I think a lot of people have realized that it's going to be revolutionary, but I think a lot of people have also realized that they're not really sure what the final form of the metaverse is going to be. And that's very common with these types of big picture disruptive trends. You know that it's going to cause a huge change in society and a big change in your daily lives. Not really sure how. And when you look at the internet, if we think about where we were in 1998, 1999, we knew that revolution was underway and we knew it was going to continue for the next decade or two. We didn't know that we were going to end up where we are today. So what we have right now is companies in a couple of different areas really trying to stake their claim, plant a flag, and get into the metaverse in a few different areas. The first, I think, is gaming. A lot of companies in the gaming space, whether it's Microsoft, Electronic Arts, Activision, at Roblox, and others, are trying to get beyond just gaming. So the first step of that was looking at cross-platform compatibility. Traditionally, if you had a PlayStation game or an Xbox game, if you played it online, you could only play with other Xbox players. Now you have platform operability and capability. The next thing that we're seeing in the space is with games like Fortnite, they're trying to make it more like a place to hang out. So it's not just a game. They're trying to make it an area where people will interact more, and they're trying to add value that way. So that's one area. Another area that we're seeing a lot of development in is in the retail space. Obviously, there's a big retail opportunity. Our data indicates, and research that we've seen shows, that the space could grow to $800 billion a year by 2024, which is not that far away. So you've got retailers like Nike, Louis Vuitton, Balenciaga, and others offering NFTs and other types of products within the metaverse space. And the last area is payments, NFTs, and other areas too, with blockchain technology combined as well.
You know, it's so interesting because it's almost as if the metaverse in the future is going to be ubiquitous with everything, right? I mean, it could be practically applied to every vertical. To your point before, I feel like in the early 2000s to where we are in the 2020s, content is king. That was always the phrase that we heard between what's happening in studio, what's happening with streaming services. To me, I feel like immersive experiences is going to be the next phase of that, and every vertical is trying to dip their toes into it. I mean, the opportunity for this can be exponential.
Yeah, if you think about where society has been going, people have recognized this as a possibility for the last 30 or 40 years. The technology is finally starting to catch up. A big piece of that was 5G, which has started to be launched. We're starting to see it everywhere. Significantly faster speeds, low latency. That's allowing this to happen on a global scale.
So we realize that there's many opportunities out there, and it's really hard for an investor to pick those specific opportunities. Tell us about the ETF that gives investors exposure to this space.
So this index that we built, we licensed it to a firm called First Trust. They launched an ETF under the ticker ARVR. which started trading about 2 weeks ago, just a little bit less than 2 weeks ago. And as I said, what we're doing is we're trying to offer exposure to the top 50 companies by market cap that are generating more than 50% of their revenue from one of these 5 sub-themes. So the beauty of the indexing model, as opposed to the active models, you don't need to pick the individual names. What you do is you just kind of buy the index through the ETF, and you get exposure to the entire universe.
Yeah, so interesting. AR, VR, right? Artificial reality, virtual, augmented reality, virtual reality,
Correct.
just that tiny fragment of the metaverse. Before we wrap up here, tell me about what Indxx, what other growth areas, I know you have some new index launched in Asia.
Yeah, so we actually also launched another version of this index with an Asian client in the 4th quarter of last year, and that's been quite successful. It's raised a few $100 million and has become one of the leaders in the South Korean ETF industry. We're looking at a couple of different areas outside of technology as well. We just had a very successful launch with US green infrastructure. That's based off of President Biden's plan, which was passed into law. There's going to be trillions of dollars that are going to be flowing into the infrastructure space in the US, including the green infrastructure space. That's an area that we've done that's been pretty successful so far.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The South Korean ETF market is really growing. A lot of innovative products being launched there.
Yeah, it's similar to the Israeli ETF market. You've got 2 countries which are not that large in terms of overall population, but there's a massive amount of innovation that's happening within both of those countries and others across the world too. While the US still is the leader in terms of AUM, in terms of product, you're seeing a lot of leading innovation happening in other countries outside the US now.
All right, Rahul, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.